My name is David Harris, and for over 10 years, I've lived a life I can be proud of. I run 8 rehab centers across Arizona, employ over 150 people, and have helped thousands rebuild their lives. I've made mistakes, sure, but I've been clean, honest, and hardworking. When my son Alex told me he'd found someone special, I was thrilled. He had struggled with his own demons just like I had, and seeing him happy felt like a miracle. But the moment I met Vanessa, I felt uneasy. Something didn't sit right. Our first meeting was at Alex's apartment, 6 months before the wedding. I walked in with flowers, wanting to make a good impression. Vanessa barely glanced at them. "Oh, I didn't know you were coming," she said, her smile forced and cold. I tried to mask my discomfort. "Hi, Vanessa. I'm David, Alex's father." Her eyes flicked to my hands, my clean jeans, the way I carried myself. She didn't offer a handshake, didn't introduce herself properly. Instead, she smiled tightly, like she was tolerating me. Alex winced. I could see him struggling to defend both of us in that tiny, tense moment. Over the following weeks, things got stranger. Vanessa avoided any social gatherings I attended. She never talked about her family, her upbringing, or even where she worked. Alex seemed distracted, distant. Conversations that used to last an hour became brief check-ins. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to normal pre-wedding stress, but deep down, my instincts screamed that something was wrong. Then came the first warning sign I couldn't ignore. 3 weeks before the wedding, I overheard a hushed conversation Vanessa was having on the phone in the living room. "No, Mother, you don't understand. His father has a past. We don't have to socialize with him much after the wedding. Table 15, by the service entrance." Her voice was sharp but controlled. My heart sank. Mother? Table 15? Was she really talking about her family or something else? I tried not to panic. I wanted to give Alex the benefit of the doubt. But for the first time, I realized Vanessa had hidden layers I didn't understand. Her contempt was not subtle, it was deliberate. And worse, my son seemed to be slipping under her influence. The days passed. I started noticing little inconsistencies. Photos of her family on social media seemed too perfect. Everything was staged, filtered, curated. No one seemed to have real conversations with her. No one had a genuine presence outside of Vanessa's stories. Then there were her comments at family dinners. She would casually dismiss my work, my sobriety, my life achievements, in front of Alex. "Oh, that's cute," she'd say, eyes rolling slightly. "Helping people who can't help themselves." I felt anger rise inside me, but I stayed calm. My job was to observe, gather facts, and protect Alex, not to get drawn into a confrontation I wasn't ready for. At that point, I made a quiet decision. I would find out everything about Vanessa's family, her history, and her life before she had the chance to humiliate me. Or worse, manipulate Alex into marrying someone who wasn't what she seemed. I reached out to Dr. Emily Carter, a trusted business partner with connections that could verify identities discreetly. She had a knack for digging into digital records and unmasking inconsistencies. I gave her Vanessa's full name, address, and the names she claimed for her family. Within days, Emily called back, and her voice was trembling. "David, you're not going to like this. Her family, none of it is real. The people she's calling her parents and relatives, they're actors, paid actors, pretending to be the people she claimed to love." The world she had painted for Alex, for everyone attending the wedding, was nothing but an illusion. I remember sitting back in my chair, stunned. Everything I had felt, every instinct, every warning sign had been right. But there was more. Emily went on. "She's been doctor shopping," she said. "Multiple pharmacies, multiple prescriptions. She's hiding substance abuse. And Alex, he doesn't even know." I felt my stomach drop. This girl, who had called me low-class trash in front of guests, was hiding a secret that could ruin my son's life. That was the moment I knew I had to act. But patience was key. I couldn't just confront her in a hotel hallway or ruin the wedding with an unverified accusation. I needed proof, timing, and strategy. Little did I know, what I discovered over the next few weeks would not only expose Vanessa but also protect my son from a lifetime of lies. And it all started with careful observation, watching, listening, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Suspicious behavior and first discoveries. After my conversation with Dr. Emily Carter, I felt like a man walking on a thin sheet of ice. Every smile Vanessa gave, every word she spoke, suddenly had a hidden meaning. I couldn't just sit by and watch her manipulate Alex. I had to uncover the full truth, and fast. I started small, observing her interactions with people in public spaces. Every weekend, Alex and Vanessa would visit family in their supposed affluent neighborhood. They claimed to have a sprawling suburban home with a mansion-like appearance, perfect lawns, and impeccably dressed relatives. But the visits never felt natural. Vanessa's mother, a woman named Catherine, was always perfectly poised, like a character rehearsed for a play. Her father, Leonard, had this mechanical charm, always saying exactly the right things, never revealing anything personal. Even the supposed cousins were too polished, too on cue, too careful with their laughter. Then I noticed the inconsistencies. The address they gave matched multiple listings online, and none of the pictures in their supposed family album could be verified. I cross-checked everything with Emily. Birth records, public records, property deeds. Nothing matched. No Catherine Harris existed. No Leonard Harris. No wealthy family. I started documenting every detail. Notes, photos, small recordings, everything I could discreetly collect. I told myself, Alex needs to see this, but only when we have undeniable proof. Meanwhile, Vanessa continued her subtle manipulations. She would drop hints that I wasn't sophisticated enough for Alex, that our small family dinners were beneath them. Alex, usually confident and outspoken, was shrinking under her influence. He would nod nervously when she dismissed me, avoiding eye contact, trying not to rock the boat. I remember one afternoon at a charity gala. Vanessa walked in, radiant in a designer dress. She was charming to everyone else except me. When I approached her to greet her politely, she barely acknowledged me, muttering something about busy schedules and small-town mentality. Alex looked embarrassed. Later, Emily called with an update. She had dug into Vanessa's digital footprint, emails, social media, financial history. "David, you won't believe this," she said. "She's constructed an entire online persona. Fake luxury purchases, fake relatives, even fake work history. And get this, she's been moving frequently, never staying in one state for long." I felt a mix of anger and dread. This wasn't just deception. It was a well-orchestrated con. Vanessa wasn't merely pretending to be rich. She was a professional manipulator. And Alex, my son, was the target. Determined to find solid proof, I decided to observe her more closely at home. I installed security cameras in common areas, not to spy, but to verify behaviors I suspected. It didn't take long. One evening, while Alex was at work, I watched as Vanessa received a delivery, a package with luxury items. But when I checked the return address, it was a third-party drop-off, a staging location. She wasn't buying these things. She was renting an image. Then came the most shocking discovery yet. In a hidden folder on her laptop, forgotten and unsecured, were photos of her with different men, all staged like family portraits. Different names, different backstories, same act. She had done this before Alex. Multiple times. Multiple identities. I confronted Emily with this. "She's a con artist, David. This is a lifetime pattern. And it's escalating." The realization hit me hard. I thought I had prepared for suspicion, but not for a full-blown revelation of deception. Vanessa had built a fantasy world so convincing that even Alex, a careful, intelligent young man, had been swept up. I knew I had to tread carefully. A direct accusation without proof could backfire, alienating Alex and giving Vanessa a chance to cover her tracks. My strategy had to be meticulous. Collect evidence, document everything, and plan the exposure so Alex could see the truth himself. Over the next few days, I began interacting with Vanessa differently. I stayed calm, polite, but I tested her subtly. Questions about family history, work experience, past vacations. She evaded every detail, spinning vague narratives and changing subjects quickly. One evening, I cornered her gently during a supposed dinner with Alex's friends. "So, Vanessa, tell me more about your cousin Lydia. Where does she live?" Vanessa froze, blinking rapidly. Lydia? Oh, she's, traveling. Abroad. Yes, abroad. Busy with work." I noted every hesitation, every flicker of panic. My heart pounded, not out of fear for myself, but for Alex. He deserved to know the truth before any vows were exchanged, before a lifetime of lies ensnared him. That night, as Alex slept, I sat in my study, reviewing the day's recordings. Vanessa's rehearsed smiles, the staged interactions, the inconsistencies. All of it painted a damning picture. I realized something terrifying. The wedding itself was part of her act. Every smile, every family member, every gesture was scripted to maintain the illusion. I promised myself something then. I would not let her deceive Alex, not this time. I would expose her fully, but with precision, so there could be no denial. This was only the beginning. What I uncovered next would shock even me, and it would change the course of Alex's life forever. Uncovering the full web of lies. The following week, I went all in. Every instinct screamed that Vanessa's deceit went deeper than I had imagined. She wasn't just playing a role. She was orchestrating an entire life of lies, designed to entrap Alex completely. I had to map the web before taking action. I began with her online footprint. Emily helped me dig through social media accounts, emails, and even old forums where Vanessa had left traces of her previous lives. It was astonishing. Multiple personas, each with fabricated families, fabricated wealth, and fabricated tragedies. She had been married in some of these online stories, widowed in others, each time crafting a narrative to garner sympathy and trust. Then I examined her financial records, as much as we could access discreetly. Everything was a smokescreen. Credit cards and other names, luxury items rented or borrowed for photos, bills paid from temporary accounts. She had perfected the illusion of a rich, cultured lifestyle without ever owning anything of substance. Every Instagram post, every family photo, was staged to reinforce her story. The most shocking revelation came when we traced her property history. Every supposed house she lived in was either rented for a weekend, staged for photographs, or completely fictional. She moved every few months, leaving no permanent trail, always careful to erase any paper evidence. This wasn't the behavior of a wealthy socialite, it was the pattern of a professional con artist. Meanwhile, I continued my covert surveillance at home. I captured conversations, subtle manipulations, and repeated lies. Vanessa had become adept at reading Alex, predicting his reactions, and shaping her stories to keep him unaware. It was chilling. I realized just how deeply she had ensnared him emotionally. Alex believed in this illusion of wealth and sophistication, and Vanessa had carefully designed every interaction to maintain that belief. One afternoon, while Alex was at work, Vanessa received a mysterious phone call. She walked to the balcony, whispering urgently. I recorded it from a hidden camera inside the room. Though I couldn't hear everything, fragments were clear. "Yes, everything is ready. The next target. Don't let him suspect anything." My heart skipped a beat. Target? Another con. She wasn't just deceiving Alex, this was part of a bigger pattern, and he was just one step in her game. Determined to uncover more, I decided to follow her discreetly the next day. Vanessa drove to a nearby cafe, met with a woman I had never seen before, and exchanged a thick envelope. I took photos from a distance. Later, Emily ran the license plate. It linked to another identity, another persona, a previous man she had conned. Each move she made was calculated, deliberate, and frighteningly efficient. I realized the scope of what I was dealing with. Vanessa wasn't just a deceitful fiancée. She was a skilled manipulator, capable of weaving a fantasy so convincing that even Alex, with all his intelligence and judgment, could be trapped. And she had done this before, multiple times, always moving on before anyone could catch her. The more I uncovered, the more urgent it became to confront Alex, but carefully. Direct accusations without irrefutable proof could backfire catastrophically. Vanessa was clever. She could turn any confrontation into a twisted drama, convincing Alex that I was paranoid, overprotective, or worse, jealous. So I compiled everything. Photos, videos, financial discrepancies, online records, hidden emails. Every piece of evidence meticulously cataloged. I created a timeline of Vanessa's movements, her aliases, her cons, and her lies. It was overwhelming but necessary. Alex needed to see this, not just hear about it. He had to witness the truth for himself. Even with the evidence, doubt lingered. Could someone really fabricate an entire family, a life, a persona? Could a person be so calculating, so deceptive, so skilled at manipulation? As I reviewed everything, I was forced to accept a harsh reality. Vanessa's world was entirely manufactured. Alex's perfect bride was a stranger in every sense. A stranger who had created a life meant to entrap him emotionally and financially. I prepared for the confrontation, planning every detail. I had to ensure Alex understood the full scope of the deception without feeling attacked or manipulated. I also needed to anticipate Vanessa's reactions. She was clever, and any slip could allow her to cover her tracks or gaslight Alex. That evening, as Alex returned from work, I felt a knot in my stomach. This conversation would change everything. I had rehearsed my words, presented my evidence in a clear and irrefutable way, and mentally prepared for Alex's initial disbelief. I knew he loved Vanessa, and I knew this would shatter him, but it was necessary. Alex, I began, calmly but firmly, we need to talk about Vanessa. I've discovered things about her that you need to see for yourself. It's not easy, and it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. I handed him the first folder of evidence, photos, screenshots, financial records. His eyes widened as he began to flip through them. The disbelief, the confusion, the dawning horror. It all played across his face. I didn't interrupt. I let him absorb the reality that the woman he thought he knew, the family he believed in, was entirely fabricated. As the minutes passed, the weight of truth became undeniable. Alex looked up at me, shaking. This can't be real, he whispered. I wish it weren't, I said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. But it is. You've been deceived, Alex, and we need to protect you now, before it goes any further. By the end of the night, we had pieced together Vanessa's web of lies completely. It was more extensive and terrifying than I could have imagined. But now, with evidence in hand, we had a chance to act. The real question loomed. How do we confront her, ensure Alex's safety, and expose her fully without letting her manipulate the situation once again? The confrontation begins. The next morning, I woke with a mixture of dread and determination. The evidence we had collected was undeniable, but confronting Vanessa was going to be the hardest part. Alex still loved her, still believed in the fantasy she had built. I had to approach this carefully but firmly. There was no turning back now. We agreed that Alex would remain calm and that I would lead the confrontation. I arranged a neutral setting, a small, quiet cafe, far enough from our usual routines to prevent any interference. The plan was simple but crucial. Vanessa would be presented with the evidence of her lies in a way that left no room for manipulation. We needed her to face the full extent of her deception, and we needed to document everything. Vanessa arrived precisely on time, dressed impeccably as always. There was an air of confidence about her, a sense that she controlled the room. She greeted us with a warm, practiced smile, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a test of truth versus illusion, and the stakes were higher than ever. "Good morning," she said, addressing Alex first. "I thought we could catch up and talk about our plans for next month." There was a hint of expectation in her voice, as though she believed this meeting would go exactly according to her script. I cleared my throat and held up the first folder of evidence. "Vanessa, we need to talk. It's about you and Alex." Her smile faltered slightly, a flicker of unease passing over her features. "About me?" she asked cautiously. "Is this really necessary? I thought we were happy." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I laid out the photos, the financial records, the screenshots of her multiple identities. Every piece of evidence was there, meticulously catalogued, irrefutable. Vanessa's eyes widened ever so slightly, but she quickly masked it with a practiced calm. "What is this?" she asked, her tone trying to sound casual, though the tremor in her hands betrayed her. "This is everything," I said firmly. "Every lie, every fake persona, every con you've ever orchestrated. Alex deserves to know the truth about the woman he thinks he's marrying." Alex's face was pale, his eyes shifting between Vanessa and me. He could barely process what he was seeing, but the weight of the evidence made disbelief impossible. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, a faint smirk appearing, as if she thought she could talk her way out. "You're being dramatic. This doesn't prove anything. I don't even know what you're accusing me of." I shook my head slowly. "This proves everything. The family you claimed was rich? Fake. The friends, the properties, the inheritance? All fabricated. You've built a life on lies, Vanessa. Alex was never your fiancé in your eyes. He was your mark." For a moment, Vanessa said nothing. Her eyes darted around, searching for a way to regain control. I could see the gears turning in her mind. She had always been able to manipulate situations, but this time, the evidence was overwhelming. There was no room for her to bend reality. You don't understand," she finally said, her voice cracking slightly. "I did what I had to do. Life wasn't fair to me. I had to survive." "Survive?" I asked incredulously. "By deceiving innocent people? By lying to Alex, to his family, to everyone who trusted you?" Alex spoke for the first time, his voice trembling. "Vanessa, is this true?" He held the folders, unable to look her in the eyes. "All of it." Vanessa's composure faltered. Her usual confidence, her practiced charm, was gone. She was cornered, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I could make it work." I could see the conflict on Alex's face. Love battling with betrayal, hope clashing with evidence. I remained calm, letting the silence weigh heavily on Vanessa. She was losing control, and every second she spent trying to justify herself only made the truth clearer. "This isn't about what you thought you could make work," I said gently but firmly. "It's about the damage you've caused, the trust you've shattered. Alex deserves honesty, and you can't give him that because none of this is real." Vanessa's eyes welled up, but not with genuine remorse. There was panic, the realization that her lies had finally caught up with her. She tried one last tactic, a desperate plea for sympathy. "Alex, please, don't believe her. I love you. Everything I did was for us." Alex's hands trembled as he held the folders. The truth was undeniable. "Love doesn't look like this," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Love doesn't lie, doesn't manipulate, doesn't create a fake world for someone else to live in." The confrontation was intense, emotionally draining, and yet necessary. Vanessa's mask had finally cracked. There was no escaping reality now. Her world of lies was collapsing around her, and Alex could finally see the woman behind the illusion. By the end of the meeting, it was clear. Vanessa's charm and deception had reached their limits. She left the cafe in silence, her usual confidence shattered. Alex and I remained, processing the enormity of what had just unfolded. This confrontation was only the beginning. Exposing Vanessa to Alex was one battle. Dealing with the consequences, protecting him from further manipulation, and ensuring she couldn't target anyone else would require careful planning. But for the first time, the truth had won, and Alex could finally begin to reclaim his life from the lies that had ensnared him. Picking up the pieces. The days following the confrontation felt surreal. Alex was quiet, withdrawn, and distant. I could see the pain etched into every line of his face. He wasn't just grieving Vanessa. He was grieving the person he thought she was, the life he imagined with her, and the trust that had been shattered so brutally. For someone who had believed so wholeheartedly, the betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I knew I had to be there for him, But I also understood that no amount of comfort could instantly heal this kind of wound. Healing would take time and patience would be key. Alex needed space to process, but he also needed guidance to navigate the emotional minefield Vanessa had left behind. The first step was helping him separate the illusion from reality. We spent hours reviewing the evidence again, this time slowly, so he could absorb it without feeling overwhelmed. Seeing the truth laid out clearly, he began to understand just how meticulously Vanessa had crafted her lies. It wasn't just casual deception. It was a full-blown fabrication of an entire life. From fake family photos to staged social media posts, everything had been carefully orchestrated. This is insane, Alex muttered one evening, staring blankly at the stack of documents. How could someone do all of this? And why me? It wasn't about you, I said gently. It was about control, about creating an illusion that benefited her. You were just a part of her story, not the author of it. Alex nodded slowly, but the weight of betrayal was heavy on his shoulders. He had been blindsided, not just by Vanessa's deception, but by the fact that he had trusted someone so completely. Trust, once broken, is never easily restored, and he was beginning to realize just how much work lay ahead. In the days that followed, Alex began to distance himself from the people and places that reminded him of Vanessa. Her favorite cafe, the spots she loved to visit, even her friends who had unknowingly been part of the charade. All of it had to be removed from his daily life. It was painful but necessary. Every encounter with a reminder of her false world only reopened the wound. Meanwhile, I made it my mission to protect him from further deception. Vanessa was cunning, and I knew she might try to manipulate the situation even after the confrontation. Legal counsel was consulted to ensure she couldn't interfere with Alex's life or take advantage of any remaining connections. Security measures were considered, just in case her lies escalated into harassment or coercion. But healing isn't only about protection. It's about rebuilding trust, both in oneself and in the world. Alex started small, reconnecting with old friends who had always been genuine, revisiting hobbies he had abandoned, and slowly re-engaging with his family. It was like watching someone step out of a dark fog into sunlight, tentative at first, but growing stronger with each passing day. One evening, while we were going through old family albums, Alex paused and smiled faintly. I forgot what it felt like to just be around people who are real, he said softly. Not fake smiles, not staged lives, just real moments. I nodded. That's what we'll focus on now, real moments. You've been through a lot, but this is your chance to start fresh, with clarity and honesty. Despite the pain, there were glimmers of hope. Alex was beginning to understand that this experience, as devastating as it had been, also taught him something invaluable. The importance of discernment, the need to recognize authenticity, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. He was learning resilience one painful step at a time. Even Vanessa's absence became a strange kind of relief. There were no more games, no more lies, no more manipulations. The vacuum she left was uncomfortable at first, but it allowed Alex to reclaim his own narrative. He could breathe again without the constant pressure of deceit hanging over him. As weeks turned into months, the transformation was visible. Alex became more self-aware, more cautious, and yet more open to genuine connections. His trust had been broken, yes, but it had also been recalibrated. He was learning to recognize authenticity and to value it above appearances or charm. Our bond, too, grew stronger during this period. Supporting him, guiding him through this crisis, and witnessing his gradual healing brought us closer. We laughed again, shared memories, and slowly, the shadow Vanessa had cast over his life began to fade. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, anger, and sadness. But Alex was no longer trapped in a fantasy. He was living in reality, facing life with eyes wide open. And sometimes that brutal clarity is the first step toward true freedom. The chapter with Vanessa was closed, not in fantasy, not in illusion, but in truth. And for Alex, that truth, painful as it was, became the foundation upon which he could rebuild his life. Unraveling the network. Just when Alex had begun to find his footing, new questions started to surface. Questions that suggested Vanessa's deception was far larger than we initially thought. It wasn't just about her lies or the fake family she had conjured up. There were hints that her manipulations extended beyond the personal, reaching into financial schemes and social circles we hadn't yet discovered. Alex's curiosity, fueled by a mix of anger and disbelief, pushed him to investigate further. We started with the obvious, her past connections. Emails, social media interactions, and old phone records slowly painted a picture of someone skilled in deception. Someone who had spent years cultivating relationships not for genuine connection, but for gain. "You're saying this wasn't just about me?" Alex asked one evening, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "There were other people? Other victims?" "Yes," I replied, "and we need to understand the scope before it can get worse." Vanessa didn't operate in isolation. People like her never do. She probably had accomplices, or at least people who were manipulated into supporting her lies. The investigation was painstaking. Every lead had to be verified, every claim cross-checked. It was like trying to untangle a massive web spun by someone brilliant in creating illusions. Old acquaintances who had been mentioned casually in her stories were tracked down. Some were shocked to hear her real background. Others admitted they had been knowingly or unknowingly part of her facade. We discovered that Vanessa had a pattern. She would build a persona that seemed ideal to her target, complete with fabricated family history, career achievements, and social connections. Then she would strategically isolate them from their real support systems, making herself the primary source of approval and validation. By the time her victims realized the truth, the emotional and financial damage was already done. Alex was stunned. She wasn't just lying to me. She was practicing some kind of psychological warfare, he said bitterly. And I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. "It doesn't make you weak," I reassured him. "It makes you human. Anyone can be deceived when someone is that manipulative. The important part is that you survived. And now, you can help prevent her from doing this to anyone else." This realization sparked a new determination in Alex. He no longer wanted to be just a victim. He wanted to understand, expose, and prevent. Together, we began compiling evidence of her schemes. Screenshots, bank transactions, fabricated documents, and testimonies from other individuals she had ensnared. It was exhausting work, but every piece of evidence strengthened our resolve. As we dug deeper, the emotional toll became apparent. Alex wrestled with anger, shame, and disbelief, but he also found clarity. Each revelation about Vanessa's manipulations was a lesson in vigilance and resilience. He realized that her power lay not in who she was, but in the trust she exploited and the illusions she created. Once that was understood, her hold over him weakened considerably. Then came the most chilling discovery. Vanessa had contacts in the business world, people who unknowingly vouched for her credibility. Letters of recommendation, falsified endorsements, and even fake professional achievements had been used to bolster her image. She was not only a master manipulator in personal relationships but also in professional ones. Alex's expression darkened. "She's untouchable if no one knows the truth," he muttered. "Not untouchable," I corrected. "We just have to make the truth visible. Evidence is power. Lies crumble when confronted with proof." Over the next few weeks, we meticulously mapped out her network. Every associate, every fabricated story, every financial anomaly, documented. Alex began to see the extent of her deception as not merely personal but systemic. It wasn't just about the fake family or the betrayal of love. It was about a pattern of manipulation affecting multiple lives. This phase of the journey was different from the initial healing process. Instead of focusing inward, Alex was now focusing outward. He was channeling his pain into investigation, transforming helplessness into action. And with every truth uncovered, his confidence grew. He was reclaiming control over a life that had been hijacked by lies. Yet, even as he became more determined, we both knew this path carried risks. Vanessa was cunning, unpredictable, and capable of retaliating if she realized her network was being exposed. Alex had to be cautious, balancing the need for justice with the need for safety. Despite the tension, there was a sense of purpose that hadn't existed before. Alex wasn't just recovering. He was becoming vigilant, learning to recognize deception, and preparing to confront it in its many forms. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since Vanessa's betrayal, he felt empowered. By the end of this stage, one thing was clear. Uncovering the network wouldn't just bring closure. It would provide protection, not just for Alex, but for anyone else who might fall into Vanessa's trap. And that, more than anything, gave him a renewed sense of purpose in the aftermath of betrayal. Confrontation and exposure. By now, Alex had gathered an impressive dossier on Vanessa. Detailed accounts of her lies, proof of her fabricated family, falsified documents, and corroborating statements from others she had manipulated. The time had come to move from investigation to action. But confronting someone like Vanessa was never going to be simple. She was strategic, persuasive, and capable of turning any situation to her advantage. Alex wrestled with fear and doubt. What if she lies again? What if she somehow twists the story and makes me look like the villain? He asked, frustration and anxiety etched on his face. I reassured him, the key is evidence. Lies can be compelling in speech, but they crumble under proof. You're armed with truth, and that's far more powerful than any deception she could throw at you. The plan was meticulous. We decided to confront Vanessa in a controlled setting, with a small group of witnesses who were either directly affected or could attest to her pattern of deception. Legal counsel was also consulted to ensure protection against potential defamation claims or retaliation. Every step was calculated. The goal wasn't just emotional closure but public exposure and accountability. When the confrontation day arrived, Alex was nervous but resolute. Vanessa entered the room with her usual confident demeanor, the same charm that had initially disarmed him. But this time, the charm didn't work. There was no trace of intimidation. Alex stood tall, documents and evidence in hand. We need to talk, Alex began, his voice steady. About the truth you've been hiding. Vanessa smiled, a cold, practiced smile. Oh, Alex, you really think you know the whole story? She said, attempting to regain control. I don't need to think, Alex replied firmly. I know, and everyone here will see it too. He presented the evidence methodically. Screenshots of fake emails, fabricated family records, falsified endorsements, and statements from others who had been deceived. Vanessa tried to interject, but each attempt was countered with verified proof. The room, once tense and uncertain, began to shift. Witnesses exchanged glances, disbelief turning into understanding, and slowly, into outrage. You really thought you could manipulate all of us indefinitely? Alex asked, emotion rising but controlled. But the truth always comes out. Vanessa's composure faltered slightly, though she quickly masked it. For the first time, the audience saw cracks in her carefully constructed persona. The carefully rehearsed lies, the charming manipulation. All of it was unraveling in real time. As the confrontation progressed, Alex realized that exposure wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, accountability, and protecting others from falling victim to her schemes. Each piece of evidence wasn't merely a weapon. It was a shield, a barrier against further manipulation. Interestingly, Vanessa's reaction revealed more than her lies ever had. She oscillated between denial, defensiveness, and thinly veiled threats. But the witness's presence and the undeniable evidence prevented her from regaining any control. It was a psychological turning point. Alex realized that the power she once held over him had been an illusion, one that could be dismantled when truth was presented publicly and collectively. The aftermath of the confrontation was profound. Vanessa left the room with her usual defiance, but her aura of invincibility was gone. Alex and the witnesses were left with a mix of relief, anger, and cautious satisfaction. They had confronted the deception, but there was still work to be done to ensure accountability in the broader circles she had manipulated. Alex felt a sense of closure he hadn't experienced since discovering her lies. The confrontation validated his experience, proving that he wasn't imagining the betrayal or exaggerating its impact. It was real, it was deliberate, and it had consequences. Reflecting on the process, Alex admitted, "I thought I'd be angry forever, or worse, trapped in shame. But standing up to her, seeing the truth out in the open, it's freeing. It's terrifying, yes, but freeing." He knew that this confrontation wasn't the end of the journey. Legal follow-ups, protecting affected individuals, and managing the emotional fallout were still ahead. But for the first time, Alex felt in control, armed with knowledge, proof, and a renewed sense of self. By the evening, as the adrenaline subsided, Alex shared a quiet moment with me. "I never imagined that someone could be so skilled at deception, but I also never imagined I could confront it and survive. Feels empowering." And it was. Alex had faced the architect of his emotional turmoil and had emerged with clarity, evidence, and the knowledge that he could protect himself and others from similar manipulation in the future. The confrontation was not just a battle against Vanessa. It was a reclamation of agency, a declaration that deception could not define him. Lessons learned and moving forward. After the confrontation, life didn't immediately return to normal for Alex. While Vanessa's deception had been exposed, the emotional scars, the lingering doubts, and the subtle ways her manipulation had seeped into his life still required attention. Recovery, he realized, was a process, not a single moment of triumph. The first step was emotional clarity. Alex sought therapy to process the betrayal, the shame, and the anger that had accumulated over months of manipulation. He wanted to understand why he had been vulnerable to someone like Vanessa and how to prevent similar situations in the future. Therapy sessions became a safe space to untangle feelings of guilt and self-blame, recognizing that deception was never his fault. "I wasted so much energy thinking it was my fault," Alex admitted during one session. "I believed I had failed to see the truth. But now I understand. The fault lies entirely with her." Through reflection, Alex began to rebuild his personal boundaries. He strengthened relationships with people who were genuine, loyal, and supportive. The contrast between those authentic connections and Vanessa's fabricated world reinforced the importance of discernment in human relationships. Trust, he realized, is earned, not assumed. The exposure of Vanessa's lies also had ripple effects. Friends, colleagues, and others who had interacted with her were able to see the patterns of manipulation. Some had already been suspicious but lacked proof. Others had been caught off guard entirely. By confronting her publicly, Alex not only reclaimed his life but also prevented potential harm to others. There was a sense of responsibility in that, a recognition that standing up to deception was not only for personal closure but also for collective protection. Alex documented the entire experience: emails, records, timelines, and personal reflections, in a secure journal. This wasn't just a record of events. It was a blueprint for vigilance, a personal guide to identifying deceit in the future. He wanted to be able to look back, not with bitterness, but with understanding, seeing the journey as one of growth rather than merely trauma. Interestingly, the aftermath also revealed unexpected truths about resilience. Alex discovered strengths he didn't know he had: patience in investigation, courage in confrontation, and clarity in the face of chaos. He realized that facing such a deeply manipulative person had forced him to grow in ways ordinary life never would have. Adversity, he found, could be transformative when met with resolve and strategic action. Forgiveness, or at least detachment, became another vital lesson. While Alex had no intention of forgiving Vanessa for her deceit, he learned to release the hold her actions had over his mind. Anger was natural, even necessary, but obsession would have been a trap. By confronting her, Alex reclaimed agency. By choosing not to dwell on her further, he reclaimed peace. Alex also became an advocate for awareness. Sharing his story carefully, responsibly, and without sensationalism helped others recognize signs of manipulation and deception. The narrative of his experience became a cautionary tale, highlighting the subtlety with which someone can fabricate an entire identity and the importance of verification, communication, and emotional intelligence in relationships. Over time, Alex noticed a profound shift in his outlook. He was more cautious but also more confident in his judgments. He valued authenticity over appearances, truth over charm. Vanessa's deception had been a harsh lesson, but it had taught him the priceless value of discernment and self-respect. In personal life, Alex began to focus on rebuilding a sense of normalcy. He reconnected with old friends, pursued long-forgotten hobbies, and embraced professional opportunities that had previously been overshadowed by the emotional turmoil. Every decision carried a newfound clarity, a subtle, empowering awareness that life was to be lived on his terms, free from manipulation and false narratives. Finally, Alex reflected on the paradox of deception. How someone could be so convincing yet so hollow. Vanessa had constructed a world of lies so intricate that it initially seemed impossible to unravel. Yet the truth, when pursued patiently and courageously, proved stronger. Reality, no matter how uncomfortable, had a way of breaking through illusions. As the story closed, Alex understood that the journey wasn't just about exposing a fraudulent bride or reclaiming personal dignity. It was about transformation. He emerged from the ordeal wiser, more vigilant, and more capable of protecting both his heart and his mind. The betrayal, while painful, became a catalyst for growth, clarity, and empowerment. In the end, Alex had not only confronted deception but had redefined his own narrative. Vanessa's lies no longer held sway over him. Truth, evidence, and courage had triumphed, leaving Alex with a sense of closure and a roadmap for the future. A life built on authenticity, resilience, and unshakable self-awareness. The story concludes not with vengeance, but with victory over manipulation and the reclamation of personal power. Alex had faced the storm, endured it, and emerged stronger, proving that even the most convincing illusions can crumble when met with unwavering truth and courage.